Greetings, ladies and metal gents, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular one is called The Man Beneath the Tungsten Cross, written by Teller of Tall Tales. I picked my way down the rocky side of the pit, the massive crater, a once familiar place to my tentacled form. A bottle of human butterscotch schnapps cradled in one tentacle, and a bundle of colorful gladulii flowers in another. The slope began to level out, and I raised my eyes to my destination. A simple, dark metal cross embellished with little but a small, circular piece of aluminium that swayed on a simple length of 550 cord stood solemnly at the very center of the crater. After a long trek of this godforsaken place, I finally made my way over to it. Resting a palm on the top of the warm-to-the-touch metal, I sighed, remembering both good times and bad, as I slowly sat at the foot of the metal monolith. My ambulatory tentacle folded beneath me as I uncradled the bottle of schnapps and pulled two small glasses from my satchel. Setting one on the right arm of the cross, I cleared my throat moistly before unscrewing the metal cap from the bottle and pouring some of the golden, syrupy liquid into the glass. Pouring myself a drink, I rolled it around in my glass with a deep, thoughtful breath. Bartel graduated top of his class at the academy. Got a lawyer in the family now, thanks to you. The kid worked hard at it too, and never gave up, just like you told him when he was still just a little thing. I knocked the glass back with a grimace. Though weak for humans, schnapps was about the limit of what my species could tolerate. I poured myself another, chuckling softly at myself as I rolled it around my tentacle. Got another clutch in the way as well. Should also thank you for that one, Gus. They should be hatching around the same time I get back home. Gonna name one after you, Hal. Maybe two of them, depending on how many hatch. Least I could do to honor what you did for me. What you did for all of us. I took a hearty gulp of my schnapps, feeling the relaxed warmth begin to overwhelm me as I stared at the cross in front of me, jutting a good 4 feet out of the ground and made from tungsten mined out of this very pit. A local smith cast and milled the cross free of charge after we explained why we wanted it. Though I couldn't currently see it, I knew the cross extended deep into the ground, where it conducted heat up from deep in the dirt so that it never fully cooled. I touched it, feeling the warm metal like the skin of a man buried beneath it, a man of tungsten wool and bleeding heart. A man I called friend. It's rough, you know, not having you around. I keep looking up from my book to tell you how the next part went, and only to remember that you'd never even have gotten to finish the first book, much less the second. I know why you did it, Hal. I would have done the same thing if I wasn't 90% cartilage. My vision blurred, as it always did, when I remember the final moments of the human named Gus. The man beneath the tungsten cross. It was a workday like any other. I stood in the changing room, finagling my tentacles into the various sleeves for them, while Gus read our book on the bench beside me. He'd never formally learned to read, he admitted to me, and while I was almost halfway through the book, he'd barely gotten through a quarter of it. Gus was big, even by human standards, a 6'8" mountain of chiseled muscle and gang tattoos that barely fit in the Enviro suit. He was bald, regularly shaving his smooth head due to the promise he'd made to someone. Fitting my last ambulatory tentacle inside his suit, I zipped up the back and sealed it before latching onto my helmet. Gus looked up with hard, icy blue eyes and nodded, grabbing his helmet and latching it into place at the neck of his suit. He lovingly crossed the book I bought for him with my celery and placed it on the top shelf of his locker. Gus didn't talk much, even to me. A quiet man, he worked quickly and quiet to drill out veins of wolframite for our employers. Stepping onto the elevator, we slowly began our descent into the deeper reaches of the planet's crust. The air grew toxic with the natural gases that filled the planet's crust the lower we went, until one could hardly survive a minute without their Enviro suit. We each took a pneumatic drill and made our way to where we last left off, passing shoddily in placed braces and girders that kept the rocky ceiling precariously off our heads. We eventually turned on our helmet lamps as we reached the back of the cave, passing dozens of other fellow miners as we reached our designated spots. It was grueling work mining the wolframite, even with the pneumatic drills. The hard ore chipping away into solid flakes as the diamond-coated drill bit struck and ground at it. My tentacles vibrated painfully into numbness as I held onto the powerful tool for dear life. Eventually, having drilled out enough chips, I shoveled them into a sack and dumped them into a cart where the others had been depositing their ore chips. Gus worked quietly next to me, striking off thumb-sized chunks with each pulse of his drill. The large human accounted for almost 50% of our quota alone, never taking credit with management, so we all got our full shares. He hummed softly as he worked, the sound clearly audible over the open mic that our suits were all connected to. Truth be told, it was amazing that we could even work in relative safety. My eyes constantly wandered to the half-assed shoring and the otherwise soft stone of the mine. The pneumatic drill in my tentacle could explode or vent at any moment, covering me in caustic lubricant or caving in the subterranean cavern. But as much as it bothered me, Gus continued working, as though it had never occurred to him how much danger we could be in. I finished chipping away the rest of the sack and set my drill down. Heaving the sack, I swung it onto the lip of the cart we used to transport them back to the elevator. I began to pour it out when I heard that dreaded hiss. I didn't even have time to warn anybody before it happened. Kwump! The pressure wave almost knocked me on my arse as the Rallet pneumatic drill detonated from lack of maintenance. The cave started to rumble and shake beneath my feet as the Rallets screamed in agony. The shoring they were working next to slipped away, and I readied myself for death. Dust filled the cavern, blinding me in an instant. But I wasn't dead. I wiped away the dust of my visor, looking around in utter shock. Even the Rallet with the mangled hand and rapidly venting suit had gone silent as we beheld what must have been a Nephilim sent to save us. But it was no child of God and mortal that stopped the tungsten beam from falling, and the ceiling with it. It was a towering 6'8" behemoth of a human, muscles visibly bulging even through their suit as they held hundreds of thousands of tons of rocket bay, with naught but sheer strength and determination. Get him out now. I don't know how much longer I can. The voice was strangled as it reached us over the open mic, cut off as the ceiling crushed down on our savior. A heavy grunt came from Gus as he was forced down by the weight he held up. We didn't need to be told twice as we took hold of the massive Rallet and began hauling him out of the danger zone. Shorings groaned and began to buckle as we shuffled rapidly past. Seeing the elevator up ahead, I screamed into the radio, "Gus, we've almost got him out. Hold on, we'll come back with jacks and more shoring immediately." There was silence for a moment, the only sound being Gus's ragged breathing into the mic as we loaded the Rallet into the elevator and began slow right up. Somebody had tied a tourniquet around the Rallet's bicep, sealing their suit and stopping the bleeding. The moment the elevator stopped moving, we all heaved the Rallet through the locker room and into the main quarters. The looks on the faces of the off-duty miners was knowing one as everyone went on high alert, grabbing jacks and extra shoring like they were going out of style. I began shouting orders to get the equipment in the elevator when I heard Gus speak. "Oh, you okay?" I nodded rapidly, helping get some shoring into the elevator. "We're out. Just hold on, Gus. We're coming to get you." There was a laugh from the other end, one that chilled me to the bone. A sound so resigned and hopeless, it made me wish to cry, even though I physically couldn't. Then Gus's voice came through loud and clear, strong even. "Don't bother. No need for anyone else to die down here. You were a good friend, Claren. A good man. But you have a family to return to. I blew my chance of being a good man, killed my own brother in cold blood, and got sent here to pay for it with my life. Tell Vartel that Uncle Gus never stopped believing in him, and I had frozen, unable to move as Gus breathed a sigh of relief. Oh, and don't feel sorry for me. In the end, I did something good for once. The sound shattered earth and crushing bone filled my helmet. Before there was silence, my ambulatory tentacles went limp. I fell to the floor, my mind blank and heart still as I stared at the elevator. Jacks and shoring loaded onto it like bones of a broken corpse. I didn't recognize the strangled noise that came from my throat. I reached up, pulling my helmet off, throwing it to the ground in anger and despair. He was gone. A mountain of a man who lightened everyone's load, who hummed and even sang when the brooding hours dragged on. A man whom I taught the joy of reading and had even introduced my first hatched son to. A human who I'd called my brother, my son's uncle. Gone in an instant, buried alive in that boiling pit that knew no light but the dim beams from our helmets. A man who believed he wasn't worth mourning. The sound of humming caught my ears, and I looked up. The other miners had taken their helmets off, doleful eyes gazing at the elevator that had unwittingly ferried one of our own to their death. The song was familiar, a sound we all remembered even after the one who'd made us love it was gone. The one. Then, one of the other humans' deep, bassy voice started up in song. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound. Then, as if on cue, the others joined in, and with an aching heart, I did too. That saved a wretch like me. The short hymn vibrated the walls of the metal warehouse we lived, worked, and ate in. In its shortness, there was a beauty, for not one of us could finish the hymn without our voices cracking. Eventually, there was only silence as we acknowledged the sacrifice made today. Then we heard the foreman's door squeal open. We don't pay you to sing. Get back to work or it's coming off your paychecks. Hundreds of heads and the equivalent turned to face the Anganian foreman with hatred in their eyes. One of the humans threw their helmet down hard enough for the reinforced visor to shatter. Thank you, Snake. We quit, all of us. Before they angrily marched towards the door, the heavy metal portal slamming shut behind them. Like it was a signal, the sound of helmets smashing against the floor like the steady beat of drums as we all followed the human out the door. Clink. I looked up as a gust of wind knocked over the glass off the arm of the cross, the schnapps soaking into the ground as I let my eyes refocus, knocking back the last of my schnapps. I chuckled softly. Some might call it unhealthy to talk to the dead man every year, but even if he didn't feel like he was worth mourning, I did. Standing, I emptied the bottle of schnapps onto the ground in front of the cross and retrieved my spare glass with a few final words to my old friend. You saved our lives back there, Gus, and you got those corrupt bastards shut down permanently. In your final moments, you showed the universe who you really were, Gus. I wanted to tell you that you didn't just do something good in your final moments. I stood and affectionately rubbed around the top of the cross. You did something great. I hope you realize that. And unable to muster another word, I turned and left, clambering from the crater and back up to the rented buggy. With a heavy heart, I slowly drove back to New Camden, humming that soft tune that I could never forget. End of story. I'd quickly like to thank the T5 peeps: Cold War Boomerwaffen, Severin Cerberus, Bushmaster 177, Henry the Red, Caspar Arnholtz, Cold War Boomerwaffen, Elijah Silvercross, Dragzoon WRE, and Severin Cerberus. Thank you very much.